Hello and welcome to Bringing Education Home. I'm Herb.
And I'm Christina. And together we bring you experts and ideas to help grow healthy, happy, successful families that are both inside
And outside the box. If you like the show, be sure to follow Christina on Facebook.
And please leave us a like review on your favorite podcast platform.
I now have the pleasure of introducing Susan Finazzo. Susan is a childbirth educator and doula and founder of My Baby Lady. She believes education begins at home and for families that starts long before a baby arrives. She teaches parents how birth works, how to ask better questions, and how to advocate for safe, respectful care. Because confident parents make healthier choices, my work blends evidence-based education, real-life experience, and trauma-informed support to help families feel prepared, not panicked. She's passionate about reducing preventable birth trauma, improving outcomes, especially for Black and Brown moms, and building community so no parent feels alone. Whether we're talking about pregnancy, birth, postpartum, or parenting with a past, her goal is simple: give families the tools, language, and support they deserve right where life is happening. Welcome, Susan. It is a pleasure to have you here today. I am really looking forward to this conversation. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here today.
Yes, thank you, Susan, for being here. You know, we do focus on the family and education, and so many people, like you said in your bio, think about education when the children get older, right? When they start being toddlers or whatever. And truly, we need to talk about this way before that, right? Because it really does make a difference. I know that when I was going through my pregnancies, I wish I would have known a lot more about what was happening and how things could have been compared to the way they are now. So thank you again for being here.
My pleasure.
Yeah, let's talk about that very first kind of moment, that pivotal spot where you're like, you know what, I want to do more around childbirth, or I want to become a doula, or what was it that changed in your life, or what happened with you that made this so important to get the message out and help families more?
Well, there's actually kind of a two-step to this story because I did have a birth trauma with my second child, but I actually suppressed that. I believed that was, what birth was supposed to be, and we just suffered what we suffered and we moved on with it. I became I became a doula after working for a local pregnancy center as a crisis counselor. And it was in my role as a crisis counselor that I just developed a passion for women, specifically pregnant women, not realizing at the time that there was something deep rooted in me that was bringing me into that direction. And it was when I actually had my very first client who ultimately had a second C-section. She had hired a doula hoping to avoid a second C-section. And we did everything that we could to try to get her body to do what it was supposed to do. But in the end, she just didn't dilate and ended up having that second C-section. But she was so grateful for the comfort and the support and for the awareness and knowing what she was walking into as it was happening. And it was a few weeks after she had had her baby. She had come from Puerto Rico, so she was by herself. Her family wasn't, she had no family with her. And so it was a few weeks later, her mom had made it to the States, and I ran into them in town. And when she told her mom who I was, her mom came up to me, gave me a big hug, and thanked me for being there for her baby when she couldn't be. And that was really like the grounding point for me, that I knew that this is what I was supposed to be doing. That I wasn't just, making a difference in one person's life. I was making a difference, in multiple people in a family's lives.
Oh, absolutely. Perfect. Yeah. And that, yeah, if you think about that ripple effect out, right? How not only the mom and the baby, but then like, yeah, the mom of the mom. And yeah, like you were just saying, wow. So let's clarify really quickly that word doula, just because there's different people using it kind of different ways. And we just want to know where you're coming from with that name and that title.
Sure, absolutely. So the term doula itself comes from a Hebrew word that actually translates servant. And so we can serve in so many different ways. As you know, some people serve as death doulas. I serve as a birth and a postpartum doula. So my role as a doula is to serve moms in the best ways that they need to be served. So it's very individualized, the care that I give.
So at what point in the pregnancy do moms usually reach out to you, or do you start working with them?
So ideally, I like to start working with clients very early in their pregnancy, especially if it's a first time mom. If it's a second or third pregnancy, maybe by 20, 24 weeks, I'd really like to start getting to know them and start establishing a relationship. Um, it's funny you asked me this. I got a text message today from somebody asking about my virtual doula support. And I sent them what my cost is for virtual doula support, along with what is included in all of that. And the response I got was, well, can you just offer labor and birth support? Can you give me just a package for just that? Not the 3 visits that come beforehand, the practice labor sessions, the afterbirth care. And so I put together, something that I'm going to keep in my file, but a very hopefully eloquent response explaining, while I understand how she might want somebody, just for that time, because that's the scariest time, I can't do my job effectively if I just show up in labor. I need an opportunity to develop a relationship. I need to understand her likes and dislikes, her personality. Is very much, it's very much a relationship that's formed in order to do the work of a doula effectively.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. And that's, because a doula is kind of like a coach, you're there supporting, etc. And it's like in any coach, right? If you don't get to know the person, their likes and dislikes, you can't learn how to help them best or how to steer them in the ways, especially in stress times. You can't just jump in at that point.
Exactly.
Somebody there for just the birth. It's like just to hire a nurse or somebody to show up right then. It's like, and then there's somebody there to hold your hand at least. So how is being there just for that for that time going to be helpful? It's like I don't see that. There would be no trust there. There would be, it would be very
Exactly. A big part of it, I consider it an honor and a privilege to be invited into the birth space. It's not a place where you would, it's a place where the people that are around you have to be people that you trust. We go into a hospital, we go into that medical setting, even though we might not know them, we come in with an understanding that they're medical professionals. And so we trust them because of their training and their education.
Exactly. Yeah. And because you rarely get the doctor that you've been seeing your whole pregnancy, because they're usually not on call.
I mean, that's almost an impossibility anymore. I just had a new client that I brought in, a local in-person client. So I do take clients, in-person clients.
Yeah.
I strictly work with Medicaid here locally for clients. And then if I'm going to expound on that, I'm pivoting to doing that virtual doula care in order to reach people who may not otherwise have an opportunity to have a doula, and I lost my train of thought.
So what is it that you do for the expectant mother when you start working with them? You said the earlier the better. The earliest you can. What is it that you do for them? How do you prepare them? What are the steps that you take them through?
Well, the very first time that I meet with the mom, it's really just to kind of hear her story. Because I don't just work with first-time moms. I do have a lot of, repeat moms who have had a traumatic experience in the past. And the reason why they're reaching out for doula support now is because they want a different experience. They want a more positive experience this time around. A lot of times I get moms that, they're on a second marriage, and it might be their third or fourth baby, but it's dad's first baby. So I get the opportunity to help new dads, find their role and where they're going to best be able to support their partner throughout the pregnancy, the labor, and the birthing experience. So the first appointment is really about getting to know them. And the earlier we connect, the more opportunities we have to do that. So we can space that out and we can meet like once a month for the first couple of months. And then just like with any other provider, the closer you get, the more often you check in.
What are you working on? Or is it like diet? Or are you talking
changes in
it's very individualized. So it really depends. It really depends on the client. So, I had two clients actually back to back, well, almost at the same time, but back to back. And they were both previous gastric bypass patients. And so their care was a little bit more unique than some of the other patients that other clients that I've had in the past. So we worked a lot on diet, exercise, lifestyle, making sure that, things stayed in place throughout pregnancy. And postpartum, making sure that we had all of the resources that are available. And that's for everybody, not just for those two particular clients. We're very fortunate where I live in my county that we have the Healthy Families program.
Mm-hmm.
And so moms that are truly wanting to have that support are capable of signing up and getting that support here in our county, where they can have a mentor that can actually stay with them through the first 5 years of their child's life.
Wow. Remind us where you're living so that other people can either, if they're close by, find that, or try to find a similar program in their area.
Yeah, and I actually just today in my research found a resource where I can actually pull that out. And so if somebody calls me and asks me, I find out if they're where they are, what state they're in, I can plug in and I can plug in their zip code and find out if they offer this there. They're not in every state, so I don't know exactly every place that offers it. But I'm in St. Lucie County, Florida.
Okay.
And we have it on the entire Treasure Coast. So we have Indian River County, St. Lucie County, and Martin County. All three counties offer Healthy Families programs where new parents can plug in and get all different types of support through pregnancy. They can get dietitian support. They can get mentor support. And like I said, they can even have somebody that can work with them and know that there's going to be somebody to guide them in making good advocated decisions for their child right up until their child enters the school system.
Very, very cool. Wow. I love hearing these newer programs that are coming out that are helping families so much, because it's one of those spaces that has been very lacking for a long time.
Very lacking for a very long time. And I mean, we could have a whole conversation about mental health and pregnancy and postpartum. That all by itself is another issue that, I've got people that I work with on the outside that I'm trying to make sure that I can stay connected with, so that when I do encounter potential clients, I can plug them in wherever it is that they happen to be. So the virtual space is something that I'm really navigating and trying to get a hold of as a childbirth educator and as a doula, because that's also the telemed space.
Yes.
And so if we can get people to get the care that they need, because they're in a location where there's lots of areas where there aren't really good hospitals or birthing centers or even good specialists, women who might need, a specialist through their pregnancy. Some of them, there's not one that's more than 2 hours away.
Yeah.
And so even if I might not be a specialist, or another doula might not be a specialist, but just knowing that you have somebody that you can connect to on a regular basis during your pregnancy, who has the ability to find resources for you, I mean, it can be life-giving.
Yeah. So another battle that you're fighting is also that the last brain changes that start to bring wisdom into a person's life happen around 25. So before they turn 25, if they're pregnant, they got it. They're going to be able to do it. They're not going to listen. So there is that age gap. So how do you reach? Because I'm sure the people over the age of 25 are a lot more easy to deal with. How do you start reaching out that younger generation that actually needs the help, but don't really have the capacity or the understanding to realize that how to reach out and that they need it?
Well, that's one of the reasons why the community programs are so important. So when a new mom, a pregnant woman goes into one of the clinics or the doctor's offices here in our area, there is a plethora of resources available to them in the waiting room. So you're right, though. The younger moms don't necessarily take advantage of that material that's in front of them. And I do notice a very big difference between a 25-year-old mom and a 35-year-old mom.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And yes, it can be challenging.
Life experiences alone in those 10 years is major.
So what I do is I offer as a doula and as a child, well, as a doula, my package automatically includes everything. It includes the childbirth education, and it's non-negotiable. So if you bring me on board, unless you've had 5 kids, and you're with your same partner and, it's just a routine, you're going to do it again, okay, we can probably skip the education. But like, I took on a client today. It's actually her 4th baby, but she hasn't had a baby for 15 years. Her youngest is 15.
Oh,
and
wow.
it's her husband's first baby.
Okay.
So we're going to do the whole class. It's 6 hours of comprehensive education, but I have had first-time dads before who have just been over the moon with gratitude after taking the class, because now they actually have tangible things that they can latch on to help mom during labor and delivery, rather than thinking, what am I going to do? Boil water. That's what
Yeah, right. The old boil the water. And that was actually going to be my next question. A lot has changed, especially since I had my boys over 30 years ago.
And I was there. I was in there. I was helping.
Yep.
She lost it a couple of times. I held her together.
You're gonna tell on me.
Oh, absolutely. Our second one was a lot easier because she went in and said, okay, give me a epidural. And they said, okay, push. And poof, out came the kid. So it was like 10 minutes.
Thanks, babe. Thanks for sharing that story.
Yeah.
But yeah, what have you seen change and things? Because we have very young friends who just had their first baby like 2 weeks ago, and the experience that they shared online through pictures and Facebook and stuff, because they worked with a private coach, right? Kind of like what I'm expecting you do. And they were showing times when they had the ultrasound and when they had the classes, and then they were talking about how they were getting ready and everything. And then the whole experience was just so different in their home than what I experienced. Tell me about some of the changes that have happened recently.
Well, changes, I wouldn't say that any changes have happened recently.
Okay.
The changes that have happened very slowly over the last 20 years.
Okay.
One of the most notable changes that I would have to say that when it comes to childbirth is that the episiotomy is not normally a routine
Process.
it's not normally a routine procedure.
Okay.
20 years ago, it was pretty much guaranteed unless you were very, very specific and aggressive in making it known that you did not want that to be a possible procedure. It was almost automatic. So that's probably the
that
biggest
shocked
one
me.
that
I know
stands
what
out
that
to me.
is. I don't want to know what that is. So
we don't have to go into details. But
yeah,
we don't have to go into details, but that's a big one.
So
The
guys,
next
don't look that up.
The next thing I would have to say as notable changes over the years is that the hospitals have become a lot more friendly to moms being able to have a say in their care.
Okay.
So when moms come in informed with their birth plan and explain that they have things that they want to have a certain way, if possible, because you have to be reasonable. We know that, a medical condition can change anything in a minute.
Yep.
but as long as everything is going,
Coordinate plan.
normal and without need for medical intervention, for the most part, hospitals have been pretty good about letting moms labor and letting her labor on her own. And they let her, she's allowed to eat. I mean, that's another big one. 20 years ago, you could not eat when you were in labor.
Yep.
Now they pretty much will let you, they'll let you eat unless you're on medications or on an epidural, that's different, because once medical intervention takes place, all the rules change.
Yeah.
But if you're able to avoid medical intervention, they do work with you to try to help you achieve that.
Nice. That's good to know. Yeah. And is it a trend that you're seeing that more people are choosing to birth at home, or is that just something I'm noticing because of the people I'm around?
The data doesn't show that we're experiencing more home births the way that I thought we were experiencing more home births. I've actually had a major decline here locally.
Okay.
Because I as a side job, I work as a midwife assistant.
There you go.
When one of our local midwife, we have a mother-daughter team of midwives here in town. And so they actually have a few of us on standby, so that if they can't reach somebody, there's a couple of us that they can call so that they can make sure they've got somebody to show up for a birth. But they used to be individual, and they've joined together. They've formed a practice together because the need has not been as great.
Okay.
So locally, I've noticed that, but I don't think like the trends, if you look at the numbers, there hasn't really been much up or down.
Yeah.
Home births have pretty much stayed the same. I would love to see more women be open to talking about having home births or birthing center births or less medicalized births.
Mm-hmm.
A medicalized birth is, very practical for somebody who has complications or, has risk factors. But for a young woman having a baby with no risk factors, medicalizing it is one of the reasons why we end up with trauma in the first place.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted you on this show, right? Because we want to get that message out there to all the different families. Like, look at your choices and be empowered in those choices. See what's possible for you. And like you said, if there's no risk factors, no real complications expected, choose healthy, happy places to do this reduces traumas. Yeah. I know.
And if
our first boy, unfortunately, it was a trauma. It was a trauma pregnancy and delivery. So yeah.
And that's not uncommon. Nearly 40% of women report their birthing experience as traumatic. And that number just shocked me.
Yeah.
I mean, that number just was what made me say something has to be done about this.
Mm-hmm.
And
there's so much more information out there now about caring for yourself and preparing for all of that to make that more easy and natural. None of that was out there when 35 years ago when we started. So
that's so true.
Very, very little. So it was like, and I was very frustrated with the way the doctors handled stuff back then, because it's like I was trying to get information. They didn't care about. There was just a body there. There wasn't a person there. It felt like so.
Well, in the very beginning stages of medicalizing births, the hospitals removed the father from the room altogether.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To make birth easier and quicker and more streamlined, they eliminated the partner. Mm-hmm. That was when they were, medicating mom, putting her to sleep so that she didn't have to remember the procedure.
Right.
And it was only because that ended up having more complications in the long run for moms and babies that ultimately changed. Yeah. And that's when the epidural became the standard of care when it came to pain medication for childbirth. Yeah. And the statistics say that 75 to 80% of women have an epidural, whether they planned on having one or not.
Wow, that's a lot.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
So if a young couple came to you and said, we're thinking about probably having a baby, and is there something that you would even do before they get pregnant to maybe help them out a little bit, or a way to steer them into making great choices?
Absolutely. So, one of the things that got me really rooted into this journey was when I was doing childbirth education for the pregnancy center, and I learned what a doula was, and I found a book that was called The Baby Planner. And I actually discovered an online university, the Baby Planner University.
Oh,
And so I became certified as a baby planner
uh-huh.
through the Baby Planner University.
Cool.
Yes, there is a lot of things that I could do working alongside a couple if they're planning a pregnancy, as far as just walking alongside them and making sure that they are educated in the things that they need to be aware of. Yeah, I have financial people that I can put them in touch with, and I have other wellness people. We talk about a lot of the prep work to do, not just physically but mentally, as well as walk through them once they get that positive test, and make sure that they've got somebody there supporting and cheering them on, that they're doing all the right things as they go forward.
I love that. Now let's jump to after. Why does your quote unquote job not end at delivery? Why that postpartum? Why that extended work with the couple a little bit?
So especially with a first time baby, you're not just birthing a baby, you're birthing a family.
Mhm.
And this is a new role for everybody. And then if you're looking at a family that already exists and you're looking at the second, third, or even fourth baby, you're looking at a lot of changes and a lot of shifting of schedules for new moms, especially if those children are younger. I've had a lot of moms that are having baby number 3 and baby number 2, and baby number 1 and baby number 2 aren't even in school yet. And, moms, a lot of people don't realize, there is sleep deprivation is real after you've had a baby. And there are a lot of things that we were expected, Christina, to do. In our generation, we were just expected to do. And that's not the way that it should be. We should be supported. We have a right to that support. And then when we have the community working with us, like with the healthy families, and the advocates and the mentors, we're not only strengthening people, we're bringing strong, supported families into the community. And that's what we want to do, because we want to be able to bring these people into the community so that they can work to help support other people in the community.
Yeah, and that's so important. The Vibrant Family is all about that healthy, strong family based from the bottom all the way up as we go. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember with my second child, insurance and everything, they're like, oh, cool, easy delivery. You're going home this afternoon. I'm like, excuse me? I have an 18-month-old at home. I am extremely tired. I don't want to go home right now. We had to fight the insurance to let me stay a second night. It's like, oh, please. Yeah, one more night of.
Yeah. I mean, that's the reality, and I also, as hard as it seems to me, I have had several single moms recently too. Those are usually the younger moms. But they don't have anybody. I've worked with some young men who are becoming dads that aren't in relationships with the mothers of their children. So there's been lots of navigating. And so after that baby is born, now there's co-parenting that has to take place, where a relationship so you're dealing with totally different dynamics. A relationship, a marriage, bringing a new baby in, that's, those dynamics are very different than two people who aren't in a relationship who are trying to co-parent a child.
Yeah.
So I've had different times where I've worked with the fathers even more so than with the new mothers.
And that totally makes sense. Yeah. The way unfortunately society is right now, that happens more often than not, right? I mean, there was a reason for the stability of marriage before family, and yeah. And
Absolutely.
yes, the conservative in me is showing right now, but we want to just support everybody, But
well, absolutely, absolutely. And ideally when I go into a family setting.
Mm-hmm.
It's a couple who want to do the best that they can to bring their child into the world. They want to be supported and they want to be educated. They want to have that voice for themselves. And what they're doing is they're learning how to teach their children by learning how to advocate for themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because
once that baby is born, they have a responsibility for another life. And if they can learn how to advocate for themselves and be educated in what's coming in their lives, in their health, their physical health, their mental health, their financial health, then they can be the best teachers to educate their children as their children are growing up.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talk about that quite a bit with our parents and families about being role models, right? And you be a role model by doing it first yourself and then sharing and explaining with your children so that they understand what this is all about.
Yeah. Exactly.
One thing I was kind of weird that I was thinking is like, they might not have a relationship to start co-parenting, and that might actually be a good thing, because sometimes having a relationship and then getting a divorce, that co-parenting is a lot harder. So coming at it with two people who actually are looking at it from the baby's perspective, who want the best for their child, even though they don't have a relationship, that might be actually a smoother entry into co-parenting than what a lot of divorced parents have to go through. So
that's a very good point. Because there's a lot of baggage that comes into a relationship that has ended versus a relationship that never really actually formed.
Yeah. So if you're working on how to build that relationship through co-parenting and not how to deconstruct this traumatic, violent or whatever thing going on here, it's like, that can make it a lot easier. So
gives me a different way to pray for some of these people.
Yeah, there you go. Beautiful. So this has been a great conversation, Susan. Is there something that you came with today saying, I really want to make sure I touch on this? It's going to be super important for audiences to hear this part. Or is there something else that's just popping up? It's like, I really want to make sure we talk about this segment of being a doula, helping babies and families.
I think I really said I think I got to just about everything that I wanted to touch base on and have to say. I didn't mention that I wrote a book.
Okay, yeah, tell us about that.
So I did write a book. It's called My Baby Lady: Exposing the Worst Place to Give Birth.
Okay.
And then the tagline is Rewriting the Birth Stories for American Parents. It's just an edit right now. I don't know. I'm hoping it's going to come out this year sometime. It wasn't something that I had planned on doing. But you had asked me earlier what the pivot point was for me that put me in it, and I explained how I was working as a volunteer at the pregnancy center and became a childbirth educator and ultimately became a doula. But it was during a class that I had that I was taking when it was a business class I was taking actually, and the instructor said that in order for people to know who I am, I needed to get it out there. Yeah. And I was like, I never thought about writing a book or anything, that was never something that was a part of my plan. But I really want to see the virtual world. I want to see childbirth education and doula support be the norm in the medical field virtually. I want it to be anybody to be able to contacts, and get the support this way, not necessarily because it's the only way. For some people, this is the preferred way, and they should have the choice to be able to do that. But in a lot of ways, it is the only way. And if we can get to the people who were missing, that's really what this is all about. So the book brings awareness to the crisis that we're experiencing here in the United States, and hopefully shows avenues of how using virtual services and bringing more education to what childbirth education and what doula support means to these new families will make a huge difference in our maternity crisis.
Yeah, and for our children as well, because they'll be starting life on a little bit stronger, better foot. And that's what we want. We want them starting out with as little trauma as possible so they aren't trying to undo it when they get to be 35, 40 years old.
Amen. Amen. Yes.
Exactly. Awesome. And so to that end, make sure you say out loud right now. Of course, everything will be down in the show notes, but how do they get a hold of you and they can kind of follow you to find out when that book is available?
Certainly. So my website is mybabylady.com. And I can be emailed at susan@mybabylady.com.
Perfect.
And if you go to my website, my phone number is listed on there. You can send me a text, schedule an appointment. I do free 30-minute consultations. And yeah, I talk to a lot of people. I talk to people every day. They don't necessarily become clients, but I hope that I at least plant a seed so that they do continue their search for education and advocacy. Yeah.
Just like educating people at home, everybody wants to, but when it comes right down to it, the brainwashing of sending them to school or sending them to the hospital to have a baby, that's just such an overriding, whelming propaganda in our society right now. And people like you are slowly starting to change that. And I would like to recognize that and thank you for that, because so many people are just going through the motions and aren't reaching out. And you're like saying, hey, this can change. And that's difficult, and that's hard, and that's going out and facing the dragon and then coming back and sharing your story with the people. And that is the hero's journey. So you are on a hero's journey. You're out, you're fighting that dragon. More people need to know this, and you're bringing it home. So thank you very much for what you do. What you do is important, and more people need to hear this information.
Well, I feel very blessed to be able to have the platform that I do have. And I thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share with your viewers.
You are very, very welcome. And thank you very much again for being here. Audience, yes, if this has resonated with you, as Susan has said something that you're like, oh my gosh, I need to follow up, please do so, right? That's why Herb and I are here every single week, bringing you some of these experts, all of these experts in these homeschool families that say, hey, we can do things different. We can do things better for us and our children. So reach out to Susan, reach out to other guests, reach out to us. Let us be your support and your help, right? Everybody is doing their best that they can. And guess what? All of us need some support at some time. So like, share, review, give out all of this information, help us get out there bigger and wider for the safety and sake of our children. Until next time, thank you for being here with us on Bringing Education Home, brought to you by Vibrant Family Education. Goodbye, and we'll talk to you later.
Bye for now.
Hello, and welcome to Bringing Education Home. I'm Herb.
And I'm Christina. And together we bring you experts